In the fall of 1986, Frank Bowen, along with his two daughters, Tina, 15, and Karen, 9, suffered a terrible loss when Frank's wife, the girl's mother, died suddenly of cancer. Her income had been vital to the household, and with her gone, Frank found himself picking up late-night shifts at work to keep the family afloat. This left Tina and Karen alone at home, grieving and missing their mother desperately. One night in October, as the girls tried to settle into bed while their father was still out working, they began talking about how much they wished they could communicate with their mother one more time. They owned a Ouija board and decided to attempt a seance in the basement. They spent over an hour asking questions, hoping for any sign that their mother was present, but the planchette never moved. No matter what they asked, they got nothing. Disappointed, the girls put the board away and went upstairs to their separate bedrooms to try and sleep. As they lay in their beds, the house quiet and dark, they began to hear a tapping sound somewhere below them, possibly on the first floor, maybe down in the basement. At first it seemed harmless, like random noises a house might make at night, but the tapping persisted. Eventually, Karen grew frightened and went to Tina's room. Together, they stood at the top of the stairs that led down to the first floor, listening. Suddenly, one of them wondered aloud, "What if this is Mom? What if the seance worked and she's trying to give us a sign?" They called out, "Mom, is that you?" Immediately, they heard tap, tap, tap from downstairs. They were thrilled, convinced this had to be their mother communicating. Excitedly, they asked more questions, each time receiving the same tap, tap, tap response. Following the sound to the basement door, they found themselves too nervous to actually go downstairs. Instead, they stayed at the top of the steps, asking questions and getting the tapping in return. After about half an hour, the tapping stopped. Still exhilarated, the girls remained awake until Frank returned home. When they told him what happened, he saw how happy they were and decided not to question their story. He comforted them, affirming that their mother would always be with them. Over the next few days, the tapping continued. It no longer seemed confined to the basement. Now it came from the kitchen, from upstairs, seemingly everywhere. Yet only the girls could hear it. Frank couldn't. While Frank played along at first, the persistent tapping started to unsettle the girls in a new way. After about 3 days, the tapping no longer felt comforting. At night, they heard it under their beds, inside their closets, terrifying them. When they called Frank, he would come in but find nothing. As this went on, the girls began to believe that maybe what had answered them was not their mother, but something else, something evil. Frank, however, insisted there was nothing to be scared of and grew frustrated. Tensions rose, with the girls refusing to dismiss what they heard, and Frank convinced it was all in their heads, a product of their grief. About a week after the seance, the situation had worsened. The girls were so frightened at night that they avoided being home without Frank. He in turn threatened that if they couldn't stop this delusion, they would need grief counseling. Eventually, the girls, desperate and terrified, stayed home alone one night without anywhere else to go. They heard the tapping again coming from the basement. This time, Tina decided they had to investigate to find some proof. Armed with a kitchen knife and Karen close behind, Tina went down into the basement. It was empty, just a washing machine, a dryer, some boxes, nothing that could be causing the sound. Confused and scared, they started back upstairs. On the stairwell wall, they spotted something new. Written in red were the words, "I'm in your closet, come find me." Horrified, they fled the house and ran to a neighbor's home. When Frank returned, he searched the entire house. He found the message, written in what turned out to be ketchup, but nothing else. Assuming the girls had done this themselves, he decided they needed professional help. The girls, who knew they hadn't written it, were devastated he didn't believe them. Nevertheless, they agreed to attend grief counseling, and almost immediately after starting therapy, the tapping and odd occurrences stopped. The house became peaceful again. 3 weeks passed with no incidents. Then, on December 8, 1986, Frank, Tina, Karen, and their friend Kathleen returned home one evening and found lights on that should have been off, the TV and radio playing, and furniture subtly rearranged. The girls, terrified, huddled behind Frank as he searched the house. He found no one on the first floor, second floor, or even in the attic or basement. Everything seemed off but empty. Then he remembered a small front room he hadn't checked. Entering that room, Frank saw a message scrawled in shaving cream on the wall. "Marry me." He stood there baffled, with the girls pressed against him. Suddenly, he heard a noise in the closet. He turned and watched as a figure emerged, wearing Frank's deceased wife's dress and clown makeup, carrying a hatchet. The intruder calmly told Frank and the girls to go upstairs. Frank immediately shielded the girls, guiding them up the stairs while the intruder followed with the hatchet. He led them into a bedroom, then slammed the door shut, holding it closed as the intruder tried to force his way in. Tina, in a panic, leapt through the second-floor window, landing outside and running to the neighbor's house for help. Police arrived within minutes. Frank got himself and the other two girls out safely, and the police entered the house expecting to find a disguised maniac. But the intruder was gone, leaving only a dropped hatchet by a partially open sliding door. With no footprints in the snow outside, it seemed impossible. Police began 24/7 surveillance of the property, while Frank and the girls stayed elsewhere. For 2 days, nothing happened. Finally, Frank decided to grab some essentials from the house. He arrived in broad daylight, expecting to meet the officer on duty. But for a brief moment, no officer was visible. Just then, Frank thought he saw something move in the second-floor window. Alarmed, he called the police from a neighbor's phone. By the time he returned, an officer was there. The officer offered to check inside. As the officer searched the home, he discovered something truly bizarre. Pennies glued to the ceiling, glasses of champagne set out, and family photos stabbed with kitchen knives, always through the images of Tina and Karen. Above these photos, threats had been written, promising to kill the girls. Horrified, the officer called for backup. More police arrived and scoured every inch of the house, but still found no intruder. No footprints, no sign of forced entry. Finally, in the basement, a couple of officers talked over the impossibility of the situation. One leaned against the washing machine and felt it move slightly. Behind it, they discovered a hidden hole. Shining a flashlight inside, they saw a tunnel carved into the wall. And there, crouched in the darkness, clutching a hatchet, wearing a dress, was 16-year-old Daniel LaPlante. 6 months earlier, Danny had briefly met Tina Bowen and felt personally rejected by her. In response, he broke into the Bowen home, carved out secret tunnels in their walls, and had been living there ever since. For half a year, he spied on the family day and night. He had answered the girls' seance attempts by tapping, pretending to be their mother, then escalated his actions, terrorizing them. He wandered the house freely when no one was looking, feeding their fears and relishing in their confusion and grief. After his capture, Danny LaPlante was arrested. Disturbingly, while out on bail awaiting trial, he committed another set of crimes against a different family, ending in tragedy. Fortunately, on that December night, Tina's quick escape and Frank's defense prevented the Bowens from meeting a similarly horrific fate. As of now, Danny LaPlante remains in prison, serving multiple life sentences. Hey, mystery hunters! If you enjoyed unraveling today's mystery, don't forget to show some love by hitting that like button. It really helps us keep the adventures coming. Got your own theories or thoughts about today's topic? Drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, don't keep all the fun to yourself. Share this video with your friends, family, or anyone who loves a good mystery. Finally, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Mystery Mug and click that notification bell so you never miss out on our next intriguing story. Thanks for watching, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next mystery.